Hello, everybody, and welcome to Enhancing Your Mobile Applications with AI using Amazon Lex. My name is Rohan Deshpande. I'm a senior engineer with AWS, currently working on the mobile services that we have, and I think this will be a pretty exciting session. So during this session, we will cover why you should care about intelligent multimodal experiences and why they're important for your app, especially when it comes to bots using chat and text. And then we'll take a look at Amazon Lex. We'll build a bot during this session. We'll use MobileHub to generate a sample app. And then we'll take a look at the code that drives everything that makes your app work with bots. And along the way, we'll take a look at some of the AWS services that you can use to build better mobile apps. Cool. So as a mobile developer, why should you care about intelligent multimodal experiences, including voice and chat? There is a growing trend for messaging as an operating system. And if you look at the numbers and where the industry is right now, current estimates indicate that over 2.5 billion people have at least one messaging app installed on their smartphone. This number is expected to grow to over 3.6 billion in the next couple of years, which means more than half of humanity will have a messaging app on their device and use it very, very, very actively. Many teens right now use messaging apps as a predominant means of communication compared to social networks. So this is actually a very, very significant medium for you as a mobile app developer. So what this basically means is there's an enormous market for mobile devs in this space when it comes to AI and bot-enabled applications. The second trend we are seeing is that there's a new software ecosystem that has come about because of bots and AI-enabled applications. So, for example, the messaging app Telegram, they launched a bot platform and a bot store last June, and they already have over 1,000 bots in their store. Alexa enabled the ability for developers to build Alexa skills, and they have over 1,000 skills in their store as well, which you can use right now. And so there are other platforms as well, like Facebook Messenger is probably the one that's most common, which has support for bots. And finally, speech and text recognition has reached an inflection point. So the engines that drive this recognition and the accuracy of this recognition have improved significantly in the past few years, and they're getting to a point where they're commoditized, where you can use them as an app developer with minimal effort. So what this means is you can very easily integrate something like Lex or Amazon Poly into your applications with a few lines of code, and you can have the power of conversations enabled in your applications. So basically what I'm trying to say is bots are really hot at this point in time. Okay, and there's a practical aspect to integrating bots with your application as well. So imagine the user interface you have right now, and then imagine in the future if a user could just come to your app and talk to it like it was just another channel. For example, imagine the power of someone saying something like, order me flowers and deliver them this afternoon to my home address. Now, trying to build that UI using traditional forms or native interfaces would be fairly complex, especially if you had to localize it into one of the many languages that you may want to support. This has a lot of challenges, but then the ability of bots the benefit of bots in this case makes it really easy and really trivial for someone who's just familiar with the messaging system, basic UI, to use your app just like they were conversing with another human or another human. So touch is also not the best experience in lots of cases. For example, in a car, voice is probably the preferred medium that you want to be using. Bots can also be used in business processes to automate complex business processes. For example, there's a bot out there which has ingested several support manuals and is used by remote maintenance engineers to figure out issues in the field. They'll just use an app which talks to this bot. The bot will walk them through several questions, and then it'll recommend some solutions based on the inputs they've provided. There are bots in the legal space that do similar things for case research and case study. And there are also bots in the financial industry, in mortgage, for example, where a mortgage broker can figure out the rules they need to care about when it comes to an application, just using input and interaction with a bot. So ultimately, simplification is the key when it comes to your application. And integrating a bot or integrating a chat-based interactive interface in your app will drive simplification of the app. The simpler you make your app for users, the more engaged the users will be, which will directly drive up acquisition and retention. Okay, so some of the common use cases for building bots. We've seen informational bots. These are the typical ones where you get news updates or game scores. Then there's application bots, which are slightly more transactional. So you can do things like place an order, or you can manage your bank account. Then there's bots that are specific to the enterprise space that are very domain specific. For example, you can look up sales numbers, you can integrate with Salesforce, and you can have your employee applications maybe allow you to query for things like, what is the latest sales report for a certain state. And then there's IoT, which doesn't really have touch interfaces or interfaces in general. So the ability to integrate with voice and bot-based interfaces becomes a very predominant platform for these kinds of devices. So what does AWS provide for you to build bots using the platform and add them to your mobile apps? So we announced Amazon Lex a couple of days ago, and we also announced Amazon Poly, along with Recognition. These are AI-based services which let you do text-to-text, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, and speech-to-speech. In addition, and they let you create bots very quickly and easily. And once you've created this bot, you can use a service like MobileHub, which will then allow you to integrate this bot very quickly into your mobile application. Hub sets up all the resources you need to use all AWS services that you're interested in, and it also generates a sample app in Objective-C or Android or Swift, which you can then use as a reference to integrate into your own app. You can pick the bits and pieces you need and add them to your own application. In addition, Hub also supports what we call connectors. This is a feature that just launched recently. So you can integrate your application with cloud-based SaaS providers like Salesforce or HubSpot using the same authentication and authorization models that you have, using the same AWS credentials, and just clicking and generating through MobileHub. Okay, so let's focus on Amazon Lex first. What are the benefits of Amazon Lex? So first, it's very, very, very easy to use. Building a bot doesn't require you to go and come up with a complex model of things that you might need your bot to respond to. There's a console which in a couple of clicks lets you specify the parameters you need for your bot, and it provides you with full end-to-end build and test functionality that you can use to verify that your bot is working as you expect it to. Lex uses the same text and speech engine that Alexa was built on and has been proven in the field, so you get very high quality speech and text recognition. Because the bot's platform is serverless, it scales automatically, so you don't have to do any work to scale it as your utilization increases. It also provides a one-click deploy mechanism to Facebook bots, to Facebook Messenger, so you can plug in bots pretty quickly there. And you can use the same bot across many different platforms. So you create the bot using Amazon Lex, but you can then integrate it with an Android app, with an iOS app. You can also integrate it with other devices that may or may not need to be enabled in certain ways. Since Lex is an AWS service, it has deep integration with the rest of the AWS platform. So for example, you can trigger Lambda functions as part of the conversation. You get IAM and Cognito authentication and authorization just as part of being part of the stack. And you get metrics into CloudWatch. And finally, it's one of the most cost-effective options out there for building bots. So the goal of a Lex bot, so basically, how does it work? That's always the question about, how does the Lex bot work? So the goal of a Lex bot is to get specific data from your user so that it can give you the output you need to drive the next step of the operation. So it gets this information from the user in the form of a concept called slots. So let's walk through this with an example. Let's say you've got a bot which says, basically it's a bot to let someone book a hotel. Now, to book a hotel room, at a bare minimum, you need to know the location, so the city in this case. You need to know the check-in date, and you need to know the number of days someone wants to stay in that hotel room. So what you would do is you would define 3 slots in this case. You would define a slot of type city, which is a built-in slot type that we provide. You provide a slot for check-in date, which is again a date, and then you provide number of days, which is a number type, which is again provided. So then you plug in these slots into what's called an intent. The goal of an intent is to conduct the conversation. So it is basically, think of it as a state machine that will then walk the user through the various prompts that need to be triggered to collect all this data. So for example, an intent would be something like, an intent could be triggered with something like, book me a hotel room. That's the start of the conversation. And then the appropriate intent gets identified by the bot and starts up. And then what the intent will do is, based on the slots you've provided and the priorities you've provided, it'll prompt the user with specific questions to get the information it needs. So just walking through this example we have on the screen, the intent that would be triggered is the book hotel intent. And the first question it asks is where the location of the hotel. So you specify the city in this case, and then it moves on to give me the check-in date, and then moves on to number of days. Once the bot has all this information, once it's completed all of this, it's walked through this state, it has collected all this state, it then triggers the fulfillment step, which basically lets you either invoke a Lambda function, with the information it's collected, or you can hand back the parameters to your application, which then lets you coordinate and do whatever you want in the application at that point in time. So for the purposes of the session, we'll focus on the second part, which is the client-side fulfillment mode. One important thing I wanted to point out was the intents you create are reusable. They are not tied to an application. So benefit of this is you can train an intent in a certain application and reuse it in a different application, and you get the learning and the enhancements that the intent has acquired while it's being used across multiple applications. Cool, so let's go ahead and create a Lex bot and walk through the screens. Okay, so standard AWS console. AI services are available down here, so let's go through Lex. So let me just say that Lex is right now in limited preview, so you need to request access, and once the team looks at your request and gives you access, you'll have access to this console. Okay, so I have a couple of bots here, but let's just go create one. So the Lex console provides you with a few built-in samples that you can get started with, or you can create your own app. Let's just go create a sample and get started with it. So let's do schedule an appointment. And you need to pick a role because Lex is going to be calling either a Lambda function or doing text-to-speech recognition on your behalf. So I have a role already created. We'll take a look at it. Okay, and it goes ahead and starts building the bot. So what it's doing right now is it's creating the different slot types, and then it's associating them into an intent, and it's assigning the intent into the application. It takes a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes sometimes, depending on the complexity of the bot. So while we're looking at it, well, I was going to let you guys introduce yourself to each other, but I guess the bot's ready for us to look at now. So let's start on the left. So here's the different slot types we have. Not all of these are for this intent, for this bot. Some of these were created when I was playing around earlier today. So this is your intent. The make appointment intent is what was created into the bot. You see there's some sample utterances which are triggers to invoke the intent. So things a user would say, something like, book me an appointment or book me a hotel room. You can also parameterize these. So you can say something like, book me a root canal, for example. Then you have the different slots here. So there's an appointment type, and you see the slot type is a custom type. We'll get into that in a second. But there's also a date and a time, which are built-in types. So what this means is you can specify custom types, you can create your own types, or you can specify built-in types that we have. Each slot has one or more prompts assigned to it, so it's up to you to define these prompts. You can make them friendlier, so you can make them look like it's a conversation that's happening. In this case, there's only one for now, but you have the ability to assign more than one prompt for each slot type. And then finally, there's a confirmation prompt, which is probably a pretty good practice to have. So this gets triggered when every slot has been filled with some kind of data, and then you can present this back to the user just to give them a chance to look at all the data they've provided and maybe approve or cancel the transaction at that point. And then down here, you have the two fulfillment modes. So if you specify a Lambda function, you can give it the Lambda function, and that'll get triggered when the confirmation is approved. If not, you can return parameters back to the client. So let's take a very quick look at this appointment type value slot type that we created. See, there's 3 different options I've provided. So the intent, what it'll look for is for me to either give it one of these 3 options. It'll either look for cleaning or whitening or root canal. Anything else will trigger a retry. Basically, it didn't understand what the user said, so it's going to prompt them for a different value in this case. And then walking quickly through some of these other options, you can specify different voices. So we pick Sally as the default. You can pick a session timeout. So in case the user starts this interaction with a bot, but they don't provide you all the data you need within this timeout, it'll reset and start from scratch. And then you provide the role. Interesting thing is it also provides the concept of versions and aliases. So you can keep iterating on your bot. You can as soon as you have a version you're happy with and you deploy, you don't have to start working on a brand new bot at that time. You can just keep pushing new versions of the bot, and you can have your app target a very specific version of the bot. This is similar to how Lambda functions work if you're familiar with them. You have the ability to publish this bot to Facebook as a Facebook bot. Amazon handles the hosting of this bot in the interaction. So you just provide the appropriate values you need here. You'll get a callback URL, and you can go set up your Facebook bot. And you have monitoring set up with CloudWatch. So there's a bunch of metrics you can use to measure how effective your bot is, if you're seeing any failures, successes, if there are any improvements you need to make to the utterances, which is fairly common. That's how you train the model. And then just some other operational metrics for the bots. Okay? And so we've got this bot created, but let's go test it as well. So okay, so you notice I didn't actually type the intent, the utterance as it was. I didn't say book an appointment. I just typed book APPT. And the engine behind this bot actually is able to understand what I'm trying to say. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to specify the exact text that you expect the user to provide. You just need to provide it enough information that the bot can figure out the model and interpret user inputs. So we have different appointment types. I feel like I need a root canal, so let's go ahead and schedule that. And let's do it on Friday. Okay. You can see I didn't specify an exact date. I specified Friday. I could have said something like Christmas Day, and it would have actually figured out what date that is. So the engine's actually pretty smart when it comes to building a bot. Okay, so here's my confirmation prompt. Let's say yes. And these are my slot types. So appointment type is now filled with root canal. The date is filled with the date, and the time is now filled with the time I specified. If this was in my app, this would come back to my app, and then I can act on it the way I want it to. One more thing you have is you have the ability for error handling. You can specify custom prompts. So if someone's saying something or typing something that the bot doesn't understand, maybe doesn't trigger an intent, you can prompt them in a certain way to say, tell me, give me a different phrase. Maybe I don't understand what you're saying. And you have the ability to specify the number of times you can continue this interaction, and then you can have a fail phrase. Okay, so these are bots. Here's a list of all the intents you have. Here's a list of all the slot types that you have. Here's some built-in types, and there's more that are being added. Same thing with intents. There are some built-in intents as well. There'll be some more common ones, common use cases that will be added here as intents, so you don't have to write the same intent over and over again. All right. Okay, so we saw how to create a bot using MobileHub, using Lex. Seems like it was pretty easy. So now let's go take a look at MobileHub and see how we can actually take this bot we created and add it to our application. So MobileHub is your one-stop shop for integrating AWS services and build a fully functional application which then consumes these services. MobileHub not just generates this application, it also sets up the backend resources that you need to interact with these resources. So some of the things it does set up for you are it sets up identity using IAM or Cognito. It also helps you construct Dynamo tables or talk to SaaS providers like Salesforce using connectors. And then you can also test your applications, your mobile applications, on services like AWS Device Farm, and you can add engagement features using Pinpoint, which is a new service that was announced this morning. Technologies it uses Cognito for authentication. You can set up serverless stacks. So if you needed to build a custom API, you can provide a Swagger template to the MobileHub API creator, and we'll create the API with a Lambda-backed API gateway for you, so you can invoke these APIs with minimal effort. It provides you data storage in DynamoDB and S3, and then you can use IoT for connectivity from your devices to the cloud. So typical architecture of an app that MobileHub creates. So let's say you have your data sitting in your data center on-prem. This is connected to the VPC using Direct Connect or VPNs or any other connectivity mode you have. And then your app uses Cognito to authenticate either anonymous users or authenticated users, and then you can access this data through the VPC. You can then also access backend services like DynamoDB or SaaS providers. And what we've done with MobileHub now, since we've added bot integration to it, is you can also now talk to services like Lex and Poly using a very similar pattern through the application. And we'll take a look at the details in a few seconds. OK, so let's jump back to a demo, and let's actually go and add a bot into our application. All right, so let's go to MobileHub. Create a brand new project. OK, so you see there's a bunch of feature cards that MobileHub makes available for you. You can enable different sign-in schemes if you want. So you have your own custom authentication using username, password, or phone numbers with MFA. This is driven by Cognito user pools. You can also support authentication with Facebook or Google, so you can federate to those providers. Or if you have an enterprise system, let's say you have Active Directory and you want to support Active Directory logins to your app, you can set up SAML through Active Directory and ADFS, and you can use Cognito to authenticate into those applications. You can pick all of these. You can pick none of these, up to you. Whoa, not doing databases. This is the API feature I mentioned, so you can create APIs if you want. We can give you some sample API to get started. But this will set up a full-featured API gateway using best practices and Lambda functions, so you can do serverless API management, API creation and management through this UI. OK, and then we have data storage. This uses Cognito Sync. And here's the bots feature. And before that, just want to show you connectors. The 6 connectors that are supported right now. You can connect to Salesforce pretty quickly, again, using the same Cognito identity, or to HubSpot or Marketo, any of the common providers. So let's go and add a bot. Okay, you see we have the same samples available in Hub. These are slightly customized for the mobile use case, so they have they have more utterances, and they have some more slot types plugged into them. Or you can just import the bot you created. So you can see when I hit import, I see the 4 bots that I had in the Lex console. Let's go ahead and pick the reInvent demo, because that's the one I just created. And you just hit import, and that's it. If you wanted to create a brand new bot, let's do one for ordering flowers. And this gives you a little sample of the conversation. This is not actually talking to the backend right now, but this gives you an idea of like what the conversation might look like. So you hit create bot. What this does is it actually goes, and if you go check out, you see that bot's created. It's building right now, so it'll get ready in a few seconds. OK, so you've got this bot. So that's it. That's really all you have to do to create bots for your mobile apps. Next thing you want to do is add them to your application, right? So you go to integration steps. You can get sample apps built with Android, Objective-C, or Swift. And in each case, you can either download the full sample app, or you can download a small part of the SDK, which just has the core and the bits that you need to actually work with these services. So as you add more features or remove features, the SDK will modify itself automatically to only give you the components that you need. This solves a long-standing problem that people have, where they don't want to integrate too much functionality into their app because they're not using it because of SDK pain. So what MobileHub does is it deliberately customizes the SDK down to just the bits you need. So what you can do here is we just download the app. Let's start doing that. And you can also use these integration instructions to add these bots to your application. So there's a very small number of steps you need to follow, which are specific to the platform. So for Swift, you just need to add the plist. If you just wanted voice interaction, there's a drag and drop control you can add. If you want text, and here's the registration steps. If you want text, similar steps, we provide controls for you that you can drag and drop into your application, and you can get started. The resources that were created by MobileHub when we added a bot are listed on the resources page. So here are the 2 bots that we have that we added to our project. But what MobileHub also does is it sets up this execution role, which you saw me select in the Lex console when I was creating the bot. It also creates your identity, which lets you sign up users and lets you authenticate them into your application. This is powered by Cognito. Okay, so we've downloaded the bots, but I've already got them set up here. So let's take a look at one of the bots I've already got set up. So this is a Swift sample. Let's run this. And I'll walk through the code after we walk through the demo. Uh-oh. Demos. Okay, so great. I wonder if we're going to run into classic demo issues. Looks like it, anyway. Okay, so here's what your app looks like. So this is from a different project that I created. I had storage and bots enabled in here. And for identity, let's take a look at sign-in. So we're not authenticated, so we have an identity that is an unauthenticated identity. So let's go take a look at the bot. I had a couple of bots that I had. Let's do the appointment one again. So what we do is we provide you with demos for voice-to-voice and text-to-text. Text-to-text is much easier to demo, so let's take a look at it. This is the same appointment thing we had, so let's go and try and book an appointment again. Okay, and this is Alexa responding to us. Not Alexa, Lex. Okay, so let's do a root canal again. Okay, there you go, and we get some slot slot values back, similar to how you saw it work in the console. Let's very briefly walk through the code here as well. So we have, so as I mentioned, this is a sample app that gets created by MobileHub. Pretty much everything you need is in this one bots folder. You can pretty much copy this over into your application, and you have bots functionality built in. We provide storyboards for you, so you can use them as well. There's the standard main storyboard, and then there's the one that switches into the text controller or the chat controller. And feel free to use this code in your applications and modify it as you need to. The list of bots that we provide that got generated through MobileHub are listed in the bot factory. So here's the 2 that we had. And taking a look at the text controller, what you need to do for Swift and Objective-C is you need to instantiate the Lex client, and then you need to register with the Lex interaction delegate. So, sorry, let's do this. So here's where we set up the Lex client. So specify the configuration, which in this case is your credential provider, which is driven by Cognito. And then you specify the name of the bot you want to interact with. So a bot name is unique across an account, through an account. And then you register your client and the delegate that's going to be responding when someone types in or interacts with the service. So let's go take a look at the delegate. And this is your delegate. The main method you need to implement is the interaction kit method. So like I said, this is kind of like a state engine. So as the conversation's happening back and forth, it'll trigger this else clause in here, where you get the text back and you just display it in the text view. But once you reach the final state, when you reach Lex dialog state, which is ready for fulfillment, which means the intent has all the data it needs, you can parse out the slots and you can display them here. So this is your extension point if you want to do client-side control of the bot flow. Okay, and then there's some of the handlers, and that's it. So you can just basically copy this code, like I said, and get started with your application. Same thing for Android. Let's take a look at it. So all the config is stored in this AWS configuration.java, which has your identity information. The bot information is stored in the bot factory, which is, again, the list of bots we have. So you can, if you add new bots, you wanted to switch to a different account, it's just one file you have to modify here with the names. And again, this is a text fragment, this is the part which does the text interaction. Similar to the iOS application, you just have to register a handler, a listener in this case, for the interaction kit, and you should be good to go. So here's how you set up the Lex client. Very similar. You instantiate the credential provider, you provide it to the client, and then you give it the interaction listener, which is defined here. Same model. Once you're ready for fulfillment, you have the extension point, and otherwise you just continue as normal. Okay, so, whoa. Okay, so we've got the app, we've set up bots, we know it works. So let's go and integrate with another AWS service, as that's one of the benefits of getting apps built through MobileHub. What we want to do, let's say, is we get the slot values back. Let's go store them in Cognito Sync, just so we can prove that, yes, the data is getting captured and sent somewhere else. Okay, so I have a little bit of code over here. We'll do it in the Swift sample. So we have a little extension. Okay, we need to import Cognito, which I think is done. And then we just need to invoke this extension where the slots get fulfilled. Right here. So we'll do it right here as soon as we get the message. Okay, and that should be it. If I've done everything correctly, let's go take a look at it. If this works. Later issues. Okay, well, this is taking its time. This is always the fun part, looking at an emulator startup. Okay, we'll give this a few seconds. Let's move on. If this comes up, we'll switch back to it, and then we can continue work from here. Okay, so anyway, what we were able to do so far, we created a bot in Lex. We were able to import it to MobileHub, add it to our application. We have information to go and generate an application, which can then let us take these bots and add them to our own app. And then we have integration instructions that will help us and guide us through steps we need to get to next steps. So next steps for you, there's documentation available for Lex from MobileHub. Like I mentioned earlier, Lex is in limited preview right now, so you need to request access. Once you get access, you can use the application, and you can use MobileHub, and you can add bots to your application. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Please remember to complete the evaluations. And here are some more sessions that you can follow up on if you want more details about Hub or Lex. Thank you.